3:47 in the morning, Taiwan. The ground shudders. Magnitude 6.2. Nobody dies. The walls hold. But in that same second, thousands of sensors inside a single facility automatically halt equipment worth billions, because the slightest shift, even the width of a human hair, turns a batch of silicon wafers into scrap. 6 hours later, the complex is running again. A paragraph appears in the news, everyone forgets. Now, picture a different scenario. Same island, same fragility, but this time, not an earthquake. And suddenly it's clear. We've built our entire digital civilization on a foundation that could crack one morning, and we wouldn't even notice until it was too late. Here's the strange part. Silicon Valley doesn't manufacture a single processor. NVIDIA doesn't, Apple doesn't. They draw the blueprints, then ship them here to 15 square miles of land near the city of Hsinchu. One company alone produces over 90% of the planet's most advanced microchips. Not a significant share, not a leading position, 90%. And here's the paradox. Governments in Washington, Tokyo, and Berlin are pouring hundreds of billions into new manufacturing sites. Headlines shout about breaking the monopoly. Meanwhile, it only tightens its grip. Why doesn't money solve this the way it should? The answer isn't hiding in a budget. It's buried inside a machine that costs more than a fighter jet. To carve features just a few atoms wide, ordinary light won't cut it. You need radiation so extreme it doesn't occur in nature. It has to be manufactured through controlled explosions. Here's what that looks like. A droplet of molten tin, smaller than a speck of dust, falls into a vacuum chamber. A beam strikes it twice, first flattening it, then igniting it. 50,000 times a second. Each flash is a miniature star, living for a few millionths of an instant. Machines capable of this come from exactly one company on Earth, the Dutch firm ASML. A single unit, $350 million, 180 tons, 3 cargo planes to move it. But here's the trick the headlines never mention. Owning the equipment doesn't mean knowing how to run it. It's like buying a concert grand piano and assuming that makes you a pianist.
Here's the number that decides everything in this industry. The percentage of usable dies pulled from a single wafer. You process a surface holding 1,000 microchips. If half come out defective, you've just burned millions in a single shift. The Taiwanese manufacturer consistently holds yields above 80% on brand new process nodes. Rivals working the same stage land at 40, maybe 50. The gap isn't better hardware. The machines are identical. The gap is 40 years of accumulated, nearly instinctive skill, something you can't buy, can't copy, and can't write into a patent. Think of the difference between a chef with 30 years behind the stove and someone who just finished reading the same cookbook. When the US passed the CHIPS Act, the plan sounded simple. Build an identical complex in Arizona, problem solved. Reality proved harsher. Construction stalled, not from a lack of funding, from a cultural wall. Taiwanese specialists were used to a rhythm American labor unions called impossible. Here's a detail rarely mentioned. Back home, if a machine drifts half a nanometer at 3 in the morning on a Sunday, a senior technician arrives within 20 minutes. He lives a few blocks away. That's not heroism. That's an ordinary Sunday. In Arizona, the nearest engineer with that level of expertise might be an ocean away. You can't copy the building and expect an entire ecosystem of people, habits, and suppliers to appear alongside it. Because surrounding those Taiwanese sites, within a 2-hour drive, sit thousands of smaller companies,
Suppliers of ultra-pure water, specialized gas mixtures, repair crews keeping the whole organism alive around the clock. Building the factory without that network is like installing a Formula One engine in a car with no fuel lines. It looks magnificent. It goes nowhere.
And here's where it gets even more interesting. Today's AI accelerators, NVIDIA's Blackwell, for instance, aren't a single piece of silicon anymore. They're several separate components stitched together through a process called CoWoS, compute tiles and ultra-fast memory fused with micron-level precision. Guess who controls the overwhelming majority of that stitching capacity worldwide? Right, the same giant again. So even if a rival matched that silicon tomorrow, they still couldn't assemble a finished accelerator at the scale the market needs. The bottleneck is no longer the transistor. The bottleneck is the glue holding the whole module together. And that glue belongs to one entity on one small patch of land. Analysts call it the Silicon Shield. The idea that defending Taiwan means defending modern civilization itself. A beautiful theory. But a shield only holds as long as the ground beneath it stays stable. And that ground sits on a fault line in the path of typhoons, 80 miles from the largest army on the planet. We're designing systems capable of trillions of operations per second. We're building a future where machines think faster than we do. And that entire future rests on a handful of clean rooms along the coast of a landmass the size of Massachusetts. The question isn't whether humanity can build an alternative. The question is whether it can, before something goes wrong.